She called me a terrorist to 911 dispatchers while standing in my driveway. Margaret, the HOA president, fabricated an entire emergency, complete with panicked breathing and claims I threatened her with explosives because I refused to let her illegally search my home. Within 3 minutes, police cruisers surrounded me, officers with hands on holsters, neighbors recording everything, my entire life imploding in real time. That phone call was designed to destroy me, force me to sell my mountain property and vanish quietly like the 8 families before me who couldn't fight back. But Margaret made one fatal mistake. She didn't know I'd already started documenting her operation. What began as a garden dispute exploded into a federal investigation exposing $4.8 million in fraud, arson, and corruption reaching county government. Stay until the end because the final courtroom moment delivers justice so satisfying it'll restore your faith in the system. Drop a comment with your location. I need to know how widespread these HOA nightmares actually are. The hose was still running when I heard her voice cut through the mountain air like a chainsaw. What the hell do you think you're doing? I turned. Margaret was storming across my lawn, blazer pressed sharp enough to cut glass, clipboard clutched in her fist like a weapon she fully intended to use. Mid-50s, hair sprayed into submission, eyes that had forgotten how to see people, only violations. She didn't walk, she invaded. Your garden, she spat, jabbing a finger at my wildflowers. Section 14.3. HOA bylaws, unapproved landscaping. I kept my voice level. I submitted plans to the architectural committee 3 months ago. They approved it. Her face went from pink to crimson in seconds. I don't care what they approved. I'm the president, and I'm telling you this. She gestured at the native plants like they were a crime scene. This trash needs to go. Behind her, the lake sparkled under morning sun. Pine trees framed mountains that touched blue sky. Paradise, except for the woman currently vibrating with rage on my property. The committee signed off, I repeated. Everything's documented. Then you won't mind me inspecting your home right now. The shift happened fast, too fast. I need to verify compliance with interior maintenance standards, she continued, already moving toward my front door. Section 9.7 grants me access for quarterly inspections. I stepped into her path. I'd like to see that bylaw. She froze, stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. Excuse me, show me section 9.7, the part that says you can enter my home without notice. Her jaw clenched, the clipboard trembled slightly in her grip. I don't need to show you anything, I'm HOA president. You signed the covenants when you bought this house. I did, and I read them. There's no provision for warrantless inspections. Silence stretched between us. A crow called from somewhere in the pines. Water from my hose pooled around my boots, soaking into grass. When Margaret spoke again, her voice had dropped into something cold, something that lived in a different place than anger. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. She pulled out her phone. I watched, confused, as she stepped back, turned slightly away. Then her voice changed, completely breathy, panicked, scared. 911. Yes, I need help immediately. There's a man on my property making threats. He mentioned something about explosives. His sprinkler system, he said, but the way he said it, I think he might be dangerous, Middle Eastern looking. Very aggressive, please hurry. My stomach dropped into a hole that had no bottom. She wasn't calling my bluff, she was ending me. What are you? I started. She held up one finger, shook her head. Kept talking to dispatch, voice trembling with manufactured fear. Sirens, already, how were they already coming? 3 squad cars screamed around the corner, tires squealing on asphalt, doors flying open. Officers emerging with hands on holsters. Margaret pointed at me with a shaking hand. That's him, he threatened me, said he had things in his garage, I'm scared, please. The lead officer's hand moved to his gun. Everything I'd built here, the home, the garden, the quiet life by the lake was about to detonate, and Margaret was smiling. Hands where I can see them, the command hit like a physical force. I raised my hands slowly. Water still running from the forgotten hose, creating a puddle that reflected fractured sky and 3 patrol cars with lights painting my house in red and blue chaos. Neighbors emerging from doors, phones up, recording. This was going online. Right now, my face, my yard, my life becoming content. Lead officer approached, tall, crew-cut, hand resting on his holster like it belonged there. Behind him, Margaret dabbed at completely dry eyes with a tissue she'd produced from nowhere. Sir, we received a report of threats and suspicious behavior. My voice came out steadier than I felt. She wanted to search my home without legal authority. I refused, so she called you and lied. Margaret gasped, actually gasped. He's been acting erratic all morning, she said, voice still trembling. Mentioned chemicals in his garage. Suspicious packages. I was just trying to perform standard HOA duties and he became hostile. The officer's eyes narrowed slightly. License and registration. Wallet, back pocket. I'm reaching for it now. I moved like I was defusing a bomb, slowly, carefully, broadcasting every intention. Margaret made a small noise, half gasp, half whimper. He's reaching for something, the officer tensed. His partner's hand moved to her weapon. This was how people died, traffic stops, wallets mistaken for guns, movement interpreted as threat. Just my wallet, I said, voice cracking now. Nothing else, the officer nodded. Let me retrieve it, checked my license against my face, glanced at my house number. You live here? 5 years, he looked at Margaret. Ma'am, you said he mentioned explosives. She stumbled for half a second. Well, he said something about his sprinkler system and chemicals. The way he said it sounded threatening, and he has all these suspicious tools in his garage. Tools? I saw them through the window. Unusual equipment. The officer walked to my open garage, peered inside. I watched his posture change, shoulders relaxing incrementally, lawn mower, fertilizer bags, paint cans, rake, shovel. Completely normal suburban garage contents. He returned, asked Margaret specific questions. What exactly did he threaten you with? Well, he didn't say specific words, but his tone. What were his exact words, ma'am? Her story started contradicting itself. Too many details suddenly, too rehearsed. She'd prepared for compliance, not interrogation. The officer's partner was interviewing my neighbor Tom, elderly veteran, 70s, crew cut gone gray. He was shaking his head, pointing at Margaret, making gestures that clearly indicated she'd approach me, not the other way around. The tide shifted, but Margaret doubled down. I demand you search his home. HOA authority grants me legal standing. There could be dangerous materials inside. The officer looked tired, like he'd seen this movie before and hated the ending. Ma'am, that's not how warrants work. Then I'll call your supervisor, the mayor. I'll file a formal complaint. I know the county commissioner personally. You're welcome to do that. She pulled out her phone again, started dialing, making threats, dropping names, each one delivered like a hammer blow. The lake behind my house sparkled in morning sun, completely unaware that my entire existence was currently being dismantled by a woman with a clipboard and connections. The officer handed back my license. We'll file a report. If you have any further issues, call us. He said it to me, not to her. Margaret's face went purple, but she was already planning, already calculating. I could see it in her eyes, the cold assessment of someone who'd just lost a battle but hadn't lost the war. She left without another word. The officers followed. And I stood in my driveway, hands still shaking, while my neighbors slowly retreated inside. One of them, woman across the street, wouldn't meet my eyes. The adrenaline crash hit like falling off a cliff. I made it inside before my legs gave out, sat on the kitchen floor, back against cabinets, staring at nothing while my hands trembled and my brain tried processing what had just happened. She'd called 911, weaponized police, turned my refusal into a terrorist threat, all because I wouldn't let her into my home. Knock on the door, I flinched, stood too fast. Dizziness. Tom stood on my porch. Old Marine, weathered face, eyes that had seen things and remembered all of them. You okay, son? I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. He came inside without asking, sat at my kitchen table like he owned the place. She pulled this before, he said. 3 years ago, different homeowner, young couple, new baby. Margaret claimed code violations, then claimed they threatened her, then claimed all kinds of things. They paid thousands in legal fees trying to fight it. What happened to them? Moved away, sold the house for less than they paid, left quietly. His words hung in the air like smoke. You need to document everything, Tom continued. Get cameras, lawyer up, because she's not done. This was just the opening move. After he left, I started researching. What I found made my blood run cold. Margaret wasn't just HOA president, she was connected. Brother-in-law, county commissioner, sister, code enforcement supervisor. Husband, owner of the largest property management company in the area. I dug deeper. 8 families in 5 years, all targeted with violations, all pressured with fines. All eventually sold their homes. I pulled county records, cross-referenced sales data. The pattern emerged like a photograph developing in chemicals. Properties acquired through shell companies, same buyers, same legal representation. Resold within months at 30 to 40% profit. They weren't enforcing HOA rules. They were running a real estate fraud operation, using harassment and legal intimidation to force below-market sales, flipping properties for massive profit, and hiding it all behind HOA authority and family connections. Total documented profit, $3.2 million over 5 years. I was staring at organized crime disguised as suburban governance. My phone buzzed, email notification. HOA fine notice, $500 for threatening HOA officer and emergency response costs incurred due to your behavior. Second email arrived 30 seconds later. Mandatory home inspection scheduled for tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. Refusal would result in $1,000 daily fine until compliance achieved. My phone rang. Unknown number, I answered, heavy breathing. Then her voice, syrupy sweet poison. Pay the fine, sell the house, leave quietly, or this gets much, much worse. Click. The lake outside my window looked different now, less like paradise. More like the scenic backdrop to a trap I'd walked into 5 years ago without knowing the walls were already closing. I had two choices: run like the 8 families before me, or fight something that had unlimited resources, political connections, and zero conscience. Tom's words echoed, document everything. I opened my laptop and started writing down every detail while my hands still shook and sirens still rang in my ears. 3 attorneys, first one listened for 10 minutes, checked his calendar, apologized. Margaret's family has deep roots here, I can't take this case, conflict of interest. Second attorney was more direct. Her brother-in-law signs off on half the development permits in this county. I'm not committing professional suicide. Third attorney was different. David, recently relocated from Seattle, didn't know the local politics. Didn't care about the local politics. He reviewed my documentation for 2 hours, face darkening with each page. This violates RICO statutes, he said finally. Racketeering, organized fraud. But proving it requires resources most people don't have. What kind of resources? 6 figures, maybe more, and that's if we win. My savings account had $12,000. Meanwhile, the fines kept stacking. I refused the inspection, cited Fourth Amendment protections, state law requiring 48-hour notice and legitimate cause for entry. Margaret's response was nuclear. Emergency HOA board meeting. Held with 36 hours notice, technically legal but clearly designed to prevent opposition. 3 board members present, all connected to Margaret through business or family. They voted unanimously to place a lien on my property. Amount $8,500. Violations listed: threatening behavior, unpaid fines, refusal to comply with inspections, creating community disturbance. 3 days. 72 hours from peaceful garden watering to facing foreclosure. The lake outside looked the same: blue water, green mountains, white clouds reflected perfectly. But I couldn't see beauty anymore. Only the bars of a prison I hadn't known I was living in. I started installing cameras that night, 8 of them, covering every angle of my property. Cost: $2,000 on a credit card that was already carrying balance. The cameras went live at 11 p.m. At 2:47 a.m. my phone exploded with motion alerts. I pulled up the feed and watched in real time as someone drove across my garden, deliberately, systematically, crushing every wildflower I'd planted. Then they got out, face obscured by hood and mask, and spray-painted terrorist across my garage door in red letters 3 feet high. License plate covered, vehicle make unclear in darkness. I called 911, different dispatcher, different officers. They took a report, sympathetic but helpless. Without clear identification, there's nothing actionable here. The next morning, I woke to an email from Margaret to the entire HOA. Dear neighbors, I'm deeply concerned about the recent vandalism in our safe community. As your HOA president, I'm committed to protecting property values and implementing enhanced security measures. Together, we'll keep our neighborhood safe. The manipulation was surgical. She'd probably ordered the vandalism, was definitely using it to position herself as protector while I became the problem. 2 neighbors stopped talking to me. One crossed the street when she saw me coming. Social isolation, another weapon in the arsenal. Tom still came by, brought coffee, sat on my porch, but he was old, vulnerable. And I couldn't shake the feeling I was making him a target just by accepting his friendship. David called that afternoon. The lien is legal unless we can prove the underlying fines are fraudulent. We need to move fast. File an injunction, challenge the emergency meeting procedures. But I'm going to be honest, this is going to get expensive and ugly. Through my window, mountains rose against blue sky. Somewhere out there, Margaret was planning her next move, and I was running out of money, time, and options. Sleep became impossible. 3 a.m., laptop glowing, eyes burning. Diving deeper into county records that most people would never think to search. Then I found it, the crack in their armor: zoning variance request approved 8 months ago. Property location matched one of the houses Margaret's husband's company acquired through distressed sale. The variance increased property value by approximately $200,000. Commissioner who approved it: Margaret's brother-in-law. I pulled more records, every property in their fraud pattern, every zoning change, permit approval, code enforcement decision. The same names kept appearing. Brother-in-law voting on variances. Sister signing off on violations. Husband's company swooping in with cash offers. Properties flipped within 6 months. It was all there, hidden in bureaucratic language and scattered across different departments. But undeniable once you connected the dots. I built a timeline, spreadsheet, cross-references: 8 families, 8 properties, 8 zoning approvals that directly benefited the new owners. Total documented profit: $3.2 million. But I needed more, needed proof of coordination, evidence of conspiracy, not just suspicious coincidence. David arrived at noon, reviewed my research, face grim. This is good, really good. But circumstantial, defense will argue it's all coincidence and legitimate business. So what do? He leaned back, studied me. Something risky, we bait them, make them expose their process. The plan was simple and terrifying. I'd appear to break, request meeting with Margaret, act defeated, discuss selling quickly to avoid further trouble, and I'd wear a wire. It's legal in this state, David explained. Single-party consent. If you're part of the conversation, you can record it. What if she suspects? Then you get nothing and show your hand. What if her lawyer is present? She won't talk. You get nothing and show your hand. What if every option has risk? But right now you're losing. The lien stands. The fines are accumulating. She's got political protection and unlimited resources. We need something that breaks through all that. I looked out at the lake. Morning mist rising off water. Mountains emerging from gray. Last beautiful morning before I potentially destroyed my life or saved it. I sent the email at 2 p.m. Margaret, I'd like to discuss resolving this situation. I can't afford prolonged legal battle. Can we meet privately to find a solution? Response came in 4 minutes. Tomorrow, my office, 2 p.m., come alone. That night, another envelope appeared on my doorstep. No postage. Hand-delivered, inside, photographs, me at the grocery store, pumping gas, walking into Tom's house. Sitting on my porch, no words, no threats, just pictures. The message was clear, we're watching. We know your movements. We can reach you anywhere. I locked every door, checked every camera, sat in darkness with my phone in one hand and a baseball bat in the other. Tomorrow, I'd walk into Margaret's office wearing a wire. And either I'd get evidence that could destroy her empire, or she'd destroy me first. David fitted the recording device in his van, tiny microphone, transmitter hidden in my shirt button, professional grade. Undetectable unless they physically searched me. I'll monitor from here, he said, showing me the receiver. Panic button in your left pocket, 3 clicks and I call police. We rehearse scenarios, practice deflection techniques. Went over questions designed to make her talk without making her suspicious. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The drive to her office felt like driving to an execution. Margaret's husband operated his property management company from a glass and steel building overlooking the valley. Modern, expensive, built on the profits of people they'd systematically destroyed. Receptionist looked through me like I was already gone. Waiting room designed to intimidate, awards, photos with politicians, framed newspaper articles about community leadership. 2 p.m. came and went. 2:10, 2:15. 2:20 power move, making me wait, making me sweat. Finally she emerged, pantsuit, shark smile. Eyes that calculated everything and felt nothing. Her office was corner suite. Windows framing mountains like captured landscape. Like she owned the view and everything in it. Coffee? No thanks, she sat, folded hands on desk, waited. I delivered my rehearsed surrender, financial pressure mounting. Can't afford legal battle, want to sell, need this nightmare to end. Just want peace, her smile widened. This was the moment she lived for, broken opponent, total victory. Another property added to the collection. She leaned back, relaxed, started talking. I appreciate your practical approach. Many people let pride complicate these situations unnecessarily. I nodded, looked defeated, let her feel superior. The HOA enforcement process is designed to maintain community standards, she continued. Sometimes that means difficult decisions, but ultimately it protects property values for everyone. I understand, I just can't keep fighting. Smart, now selling quickly can be challenging in your situation. The lien complicates traditional financing, but my husband's company specializes in helping homeowners in distressed circumstances. There it was, the first piece. They'd buy my house, below market of course. The lien, the violations, the negative attention, all that impacts value, but they can close quickly. Cash offer, everything resolved in 2 weeks. I asked questions, played naive, let her explain. She talked about similar situations she'd helped resolve. Mentioned 3 specific addresses, all matching my research. Described the process, violations documented, fines assessed, liens placed, cash offers made, problems solved. She was careful but arrogant, confidence that came from never facing consequences. Then her phone rang, she glanced at screen, face changing, answered, listened, her eyes locked on mine, long silence, then she stood. Voice went from warm to ice in half a second. This meeting is over, get out, and know this, you just made things infinitely worse for yourself. I left without a word, heart hammering, walked to my car. David's van was gone, panic. Tried calling, straight to voicemail. Drove home checking mirrors constantly, every car suspicious. Every turn potentially followed. What had happened? Had they detected the wire? Was David compromised? Was I driving into an ambush? The mountains looked like walls closing in. I pulled into my driveway and Tom was on my porch, face pale, hands shaking. That's when I knew everything had gone wrong. 2 men came by while you were gone, he said, voice tight. Claimed they were private investigators working for the HOA, had badges, looked official. My chest tightened. What did they want? Asked about you, your schedule, who visits, your financial situation. How you've been acting lately. They were building a file, documenting, creating a narrative. I told them nothing, Tom continued. But son, they're not playing games anymore. This is organized. Professional, David finally called at 6 p.m. I'm fine, had to relocate when I picked up counter-surveillance. They were scanning for electronic signals. Relief flooded through me. Did we get anything? Oh, we got everything. Margaret implicated herself in conspiracy, fraud, coordinated harassment. Her voice is clear. The recording is clean. Victory, finally, but David's tone carried warning. Her connections mean traditional channels are compromised. File with local police, it might get buried, leaked, destroyed. We need federal attention, FBI, and we need public exposure to prevent cover-up. How long does that take? Months, maybe years. Meanwhile, you're exposed, vulnerable. They know you're fighting back now. That night, the warfare intensified. Internet shut off. Cable company claimed non-payment despite my automatic billing proving otherwise. Bank account frozen. Suspicious activity investigation, they said. No suspicious activity existed. Then the citations started arriving. Code enforcement, 7 new violations, gutter color wrong, mailbox height incorrect, tree trimming inadequate. Driveway cracks exceeding standards, house numbers wrong font, window tinting too dark, garage door material non-compliant. Each violation $500 fine, each requiring correction within 10 days. Total cost to fix everything, $15,000. The system wasn't broken, it was weaponized. Every agency, every department, every regulation, all turned against one target, me. I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by citation notices and wondered how many other people had sat exactly here, facing exactly this, and chosen to run instead of fight. 8 families before me. 8 families who looked at this mountain of bureaucratic violence and surrendered. My phone rang. Tom, turn on your porch light if you're okay, I'm worried. I turned it on, saw his light flicker in response across the street. 2 old men signaling each other in the dark because a woman with a clipboard had turned a neighborhood into a war zone. The mountains outside my window were invisible now, hidden by night, but I could feel them, solid, unmovable. Ancient, they'd been here before Margaret, they'd be here after. The question was whether I'd still be here too. David called again at midnight. I'm reaching out to federal contacts. But you need to prepare for this to get worse before it gets better. They're cornered now, dangerous. Worse how? He paused. I don't know, but people who have built an empire on corruption don't go quietly. Watch your back. Document everything and don't go anywhere alone. I hung up and checked every camera, every lock, every window. Then I sat in darkness and waited for whatever came next. Word spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. Some people avoided me. Fear is contagious. They'd seen what Margaret could do, didn't want to become targets themselves, but others started talking, quietly at first, whispers, then louder. Turns out Margaret had terrorized half the community for years. Young couple 3 streets over, violation notice for their kids' chalk drawings on their own driveway. Vandalism of community standards. $500 fine. Single mother, $3,000 citation for wind chimes. Noise pollution. Retired teacher, bird feeders classified as wildlife attraction hazard. Another $500, everyone paid, everyone stayed quiet. Everyone lived in fear of the next violation, the next fine, the next threat. But my fight changed something. Resistance formed underground. Text messages. Quiet conversations at mailboxes. Shared stories in grocery store parking lots. 6 families agreed to sign affidavits, document their experiences, risk retaliation. We were building a case, pattern of abuse, selective enforcement, systematic harassment. Then Margaret made her countermove. Emergency HOA meeting announcement, special assessment vote, $5,000 per household. Purpose, legal defense fund to protect community from frivolous litigation and malicious actors. She was weaponizing the entire neighborhood, forcing people to fund her defense, draining resources before we could even fight. Vote scheduled for next week. Quorum requirements suspiciously low. Notice period legally questionable. David filed emergency injunction to block the vote. Arguments, improper notice, conflict of interest, fraudulent purpose. Hearing set for 3 days before the vote. Cutting it impossibly close. That weekend, someone slashed all 4 of my tires. Not just flattened, slashed, deep cuts, hundreds of dollars in damage, mailbox torn from the ground, bent, destroyed, camera covering the driveway smashed, ripped from the wall. Police report filed, insurance claim submitted, evidence documented, but I was hemorrhaging money, time, sanity. Every day brought new damage, new costs, new psychological warfare. Tom brought dinner that night. Refused to leave me alone. I was in Vietnam, he said, saw what happens when good people stay quiet while bad people take control. Not happening here, not on my watch. His loyalty was a gift and a burden. Because I absolutely knew that associating with me made him a target. And he was old, vulnerable, living alone in a house with original wiring and wood siding. The lake outside reflected sunset, orange fire on dark water. Beautiful and terrible, paradise with monsters. Two neighbors who'd signed affidavits called that night, both scared, both reconsidering. Margaret's people had visited them, asked questions, made subtle threats about property inspections and code compliance. I have kids, one woman said, voice breaking. I can't risk losing my home. I told her I understood, meant it, but inside I felt the coalition crumbling. Margaret was winning through fear, through resources, through the systematic destruction of anyone who opposed her. David called with an update. Hearing is confirmed, but judge is local, knows Margaret's family. This could go either way. What are our chances? Long pause. Honestly, 40%, maybe less. The mountains outside had disappeared into night, and I sat alone in darkness wondering if fighting back was brave or just stupid. Whether standing your ground mattered when the ground itself was rigged to collapse. The courthouse smelled like old wood and older decisions. Small county building, American flag. Judge's bench worn smooth by decades of cases that probably never made headlines. Margaret arrived with 3 attorneys, expensive suits, leather briefcases, the kind of legal firepower that cost $500 per hour minimum. I had David's 6 affidavits, and a recording that could burn her empire to ash. The gallery filled with neighbors, some supporting me, more supporting Margaret, others just watching to see who'd win so they'd know who to fear. Judge entered. Everyone stood, sat, waited. He reviewed filings with a face that revealed nothing. 70 years old, lived here his entire life, probably knew everyone in this room. That could help me or destroy me. Margaret's lead attorney went first. Smooth, confident. Argued HOA has absolute right to levy assessments for legal defense. Claimed my challenge was frivolous. Demanded sanctions against me for wasting court time and harassing his client. Every word delivered with casual arrogance. David stood, calm, prepared, presented evidence of the fraud scheme, property records, sales data, zoning approvals, pattern of targeting families, forcing sales, profiting millions. Then he played the recording. Margaret's voice filled the courtroom, describing her process for helping distressed homeowners, mentioning specific addresses, explaining how violations lead to cash offers from her husband's company. Her own words clear, undeniable. The courtroom went silent. Judge stopped the playback, studied Margaret. Mrs. Margaret, are you using HOA authority to force property sales for personal profit? She stood, face composed. Voice steady, absolutely not, Your Honor. That recording is taken out of context, possibly edited. I was simply explaining legitimate HOA enforcement procedures. Her attorney objected, repeatedly. Claimed recording inadmissible, threatened appeals, invoked her family's community standing and decades of public service. Judge listened, face still unreadable. David submitted the neighbor affidavits. 6 families documented harassment. Arbitrary fines, threats, fear. Margaret's attorney dismissed them as disgruntled homeowners with personal vendettas. But the evidence was piling up. Even a friendly judge couldn't ignore all of it. Judge leaned back, removed his glasses. Cleaned them slowly. I'm issuing the following orders, he said finally. Assessment vote is blocked pending full investigation. I'm ordering a forensic audit of HOA finances. Independent receiver appointed to manage HOA operations temporarily. Mrs. Margaret's unilateral authority is suspended. The gallery erupted. Margaret stood, face turning from white to red to purple. This is judicial overreach. You can't. I can and I am. Sit down. My brother-in-law will hear about this, the commissioner. Your family connections don't concern me. Sit down or I'll hold you in contempt. Her attorneys pulled her back into her seat. Barely, judge continued. This court takes allegations of corruption seriously. Evidence presented today warrants thorough examination. We'll reconvene after the audit is complete. He banged the gavel. Margaret exploded out of her seat. Started shouting, at judge, at me, at David, at the families who'd signed affidavits, threats, promises of political consequences, voice rising to a scream. Courtroom deputies moved forward. Her attorneys physically pulled her toward the exit. She left still screaming. Heels echoing like gunshots down the courthouse hallway. We'd won. Temporarily. But a woman that angry, that connected, that cornered, she was more dangerous now than ever before. Tom met me outside, gripped my shoulder. Well done, son. David looked less celebratory. This doesn't end it. Audit takes weeks. They'll fight every subpoena. And Margaret just showed everyone exactly how unstable she is when threatened. What do you think she'll do? He looked at the mountains. Something desperate. The forensic accountant started digging the next day. Subpoenaed bank records, HOA financial statements, vendor contracts, payment histories. Margaret couldn't stop the audit. But she could unleash hell everywhere else. Code enforcement showed up daily, different inspectors, different violations, coordinated harassment clearly directed from above, fire marshal, building inspector, health department. Even animal control despite me having no animals. Every agency weaponized, each visit generated citations, fees, compliance requirements with impossible deadlines. Cost to fix everything $40,000, time allowed. 30 days, my savings evaporated, credit cards maxed. Equity loan on a house that already had a lien. David filed federal civil rights lawsuit, conspiracy to violate constitutional rights, abuse of process. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Named Margaret, her husband, brother-in-law, sister, shell companies, everyone, discovery process began, they'd be forced to produce documents, emails, financial records. Their attorneys fought every request, but the dam was cracking. Then the forensic accountant found it, fake vendor payments, HOA funds diverted to companies owned by Margaret's husband, inflated contracts for services never performed, maintenance fees overcharged for years, total theft $380,000. Every homeowner in the community had been systematically robbed for 4 years, criminal fraud, embezzlement, theft. The accountant referred findings to State Attorney General and FBI. Federal investigation officially opened. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt dread. That night, Tom's house caught fire. I woke to sirens, smoke. Orange glow visible through my window. Ran outside, Tom's house fully engulfed. Flames reaching toward stars, found him on the lawn, oxygen mask, paramedics hovering, he survived, barely, lost everything else. Fire marshal investigated. Electrical fire they initially claimed, old wiring, but accelerant traces found in 3 locations. Arson, someone had tried to kill him, warning to me, warning to everyone. This is what happens when you fight back. Tom stayed with me that night. Oxygen tank beside the couch, haunted eyes staring at nothing. He finally spoke around 3 a.m. She did this, you know she did this. I knew, couldn't prove it, but knew. The mountains outside were invisible, hidden by smoke that turned moonlight orange and breathing toxic. Paradise burning, and Margaret still out there somewhere, planning, calculating, desperate enough to commit arson and attempted murder. David called at dawn. FBI wants to meet, they're moving fast. Arson crossed a line they can't ignore. How long until arrests? Days, maybe a week. I looked at Tom, sleeping finally, breathing through oxygen mask. Old man who'd fought for his country in Vietnam. Come home, built a life. And now lost everything because he stood beside me against a woman with a clipboard. The guilt was crushing, but so was the rage. This ended now, one way or another. FBI moved like a precision strike team. Early morning, 3 days after Tom's fire, search warrants executed simultaneously. Margaret's home, her husband's business, brother-in-law's county office, HOA management company. Agents in windbreakers, boxes of evidence. Computers seized, files removed. I watched it on local news, video footage of Margaret being led out in handcuffs, hair disheveled, makeup smeared, no more shark smile. Just rage and disbelief. Her husband arrested at his office. Brother-in-law surrendered his badge, resigned immediately, cut a deal before lunch, testimony in exchange for reduced charges. The house of cards collapsed in hours. Local news ran the story continuously. Scandal exploded across the community. Victims started coming forward, more families than I'd documented, 32 total, 32 families harassed, intimidated, forced to sell or pay unjust fines. Total losses $4.8 million, class action lawsuit filed by week's end. Margaret made bail $500,000, surrendered passport, ankle monitor, house arrest. But her power was gone. HOA dissolved by emergency court order. Independent management appointed. Emergency meeting held with actual notice and actual democracy. Residents voted to refund improper fees. Drop all fraudulent fines, reform governance completely, apologies offered, some genuine, some just covering their own complicity, my violations dismissed, liens removed, fines voided. Tom's fire officially ruled arson. Separate charges pending. Evidence pointing to contractor Margaret's husband employed, community rallied. Fundraising campaign for Tom raised $150,000 in 10 days. He could rebuild, would rebuild, I was exhausted. Broke, traumatized, but standing. David worked pro bono now. Personal mission, pushing for maximum sentences, full restitution, permanent bans from HOA governance. Federal prosecutor was confident, evidence overwhelming. Recorded confession, financial documents, witness testimony, pattern of criminal behavior spanning years, trial scheduled for 6 months. Meanwhile, something changed in the community. People started talking to each other. Actually talking, not just polite neighbor waves, shared trauma created connection. We'd all survived the same monster, carried the same scars. I planted a new garden, native wildflowers again. Tom helped from wheelchair. Oxygen tank beside him in the grass. We didn't talk much, didn't need to. Survival has its own language. The lake reflected sky again. Mountains regained their beauty, not paradise. Paradise was an illusion, but home hard one. Battle-scarred, real, Margaret's trial would come, justice would follow or wouldn't, but I'd already won the fight that mattered. I'd stood my ground when the ground was rigged to collapse, refused to run when running was easier, and survived when survival meant everything. The wildflowers grew, roots deep, colors bright, proof that beauty survives destruction. You just need to be stubborn enough to keep growing. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Federal courthouse, national attention, local scandal become national story about HOA corruption and organized fraud, evidence presented systematically. Like building a wall brick by brick until Margaret had nowhere to hide. Recordings played, her voice describing the scheme in detail. Financial documents displayed, money trails highlighted. $4.8 million in fraudulent profits mapped across years. Victim testimony, 32 families, stories of harassment, intimidation, loss, expert witnesses, forensic accountants, real estate analysts. Federal agents, Margaret's defense crumbled in real time, her attorneys tried everything, claimed recordings were edited, witnesses were lying, evidence was circumstantial. But you can't edit financial records, can't fake bank transfers, can't explain away 32 consistent stories. The jury deliberated 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Wire fraud, extortion, conspiracy, money laundering, criminal racketeering. Sentencing hearing came 2 weeks later. Victims filled the courtroom. Read impact statements, families who lost homes, life savings, sense of safety. Judge listened, face grave, taking notes. Margaret showed no remorse, blamed everyone else. Claimed she was the victim of conspiracy and jealousy. Even in defeat, she couldn't accept responsibility. Judge sentenced her to 12 years federal prison. Her husband got 8 years. Ordered to pay $4.8 million in restitution plus penalties. Their properties seized, sold at auction to fund victim compensation. Tom bought back his lot, built a new house with modern fire suppression systems. Safety features, solar panels rising from literal ashes. I received $85,000 in settlement, covered my losses, legal fees, had money left over. But more than money, I kept my home, the house by the lake. Mountains in the background, garden full of wildflowers, community transformed after Margaret's conviction. New HOA leadership, transparent, reasonable, focused on actual community building instead of power games. Neighborhood parties restarted, kids played outside, trust rebuilt slowly but genuinely. Tom and I became local legends, the guys who fought back and won. Other communities reached out, asking advice, how to fight HOA corruption, how to document abuse, how to survive. We helped when we could, shared documents, connected people with David, system of support forming, network of resistance, because Margaret wasn't unique, just the one who got caught. Year later, I'm sitting on my porch. Sunset painting mountains gold and red, lake reflecting fire and sky. Tom beside me, beer in hand, oxygen tank still there but used less now. We don't celebrate exactly, too much lost. Too much pain, but there's peace. Hard one, scarred, real peace. Margaret serves time in federal facility 3 states away. Earliest release 8 years with good behavior. Sometimes justice works, sometimes standing up matters. Sometimes the little guy wins. My wildflower garden proves it. Native grasses spreading, butterflies returning, ecosystem healing. Beauty survives destruction, you just need roots deep enough to weather the storm. And the courage to keep growing even when everything around you burns. The fight cost me savings, sleep, and sanity, but it gave me something money can't buy, proof that one person can make a difference. That courage is contagious. That home is worth fighting for. The mountains stand eternal, the lake reflects truth, and I'm still here, still standing, still growing wildflowers. If this story hit you, if you faced your own Margaret, if you believe standing your ground matters, drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. Share your own HOA horror story or victory. Let's build a community of people who refuse to be intimidated. Your comment might help someone else find the courage to fight back. And if this story gave you even a moment of justice-fueled satisfaction, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more stories about ordinary people winning against impossible odds. Because this channel is about one thing: proof that you're never as powerless as they want you to believe.